In this video, we are going to break down the Minecraft live footage scene by scene and find out what we can discover about the mysterious crafter. Who am I? Profe Pablo, Spanish teacher turned Minecraft engineer. Let's do this! Okay, so this is the first scene where we actually see the crafter. If you remember the scene from Minecraft Live, Agnes is walking up these stairs and boom, there's the crafter right there. You didn't even know it was there. But we can't see too much from the scene, so we are going to move forward. Okay, we get it, we get it. Okay, here we are in a different scene. And Agnes actually just walked right past the crafter just a second ago. But we can get a different view of it here. And now we can start actually learning a little bit about this contraption. Just from making some simple observations, we can actually figure out a lot. So the first thing I want you to notice is that this thing has a comparator coming out of it. In other words, it holds a redstone signal. And most of the time when a comparator reads a redstone signal, it's not all or nothing. There's actually a level of redstone signal that it reads. That's helpful information. And here we can see that a hopper is going into the top. Now, we already kind of had hints of that. If you saw this image going around on the internet, this was a huge leak, and we kind of knew that this was coming, but you can see it right here. Hopper going in, which means that it interacts with hoppers. That's really, really important for us to know. All right, let's keep going. Okay, right here is the first time that we actually get to see the top of this device. And in my opinion, so far, it looks really cool. Now, this could possibly change later on. We're not sure. But you can see the 9x9 square, similar to a crafting table. And it's got similar designs to a crafting table, but you'll notice some differences coming up in just a minute. Let's keep going. Okay, right here from this scene, we get to see the front and the side. The textures look really cool. We see later on that this front part actually has some sort of interacting components to it. The side actually has an animation already built into it, which I will show you in a minute. But what I like about this is it kind of looks like a face, which the observers do as well. For some reason, it gives it a personality. And I really, really like that about it. Okay, that's just kind of an extra. That's not really utility. Let's keep going. We're going to pause right here because we get to see the UI, or at least a version of what might be to come. Here, you will see that Agnes is putting multiple things into the crafter. Now, I know this may seem obvious, but it's really important. She's using the same recipe as a crafting table, and it's going to keep pulling from that recipe, again, until she runs out, or at least that's what I think. Okay, this is important to know. A button is going to interact with it. He's going to press the button, and it starts spitting out the item. That's really, really cool. Now, unfortunately for us, they don't go back into the user interface, so we don't really know what's happening after she crafts, but she crafted 2 groups of that sign. All right, now we're going to get a better look. Okay, first of all, there's something written on that sign. Let's see if we can see what it says. Okay, if we look closely at that sign, it actually says turn machine on or off. I don't really see that as important. Let's keep going. Okay, we have some crazy redstone going on here. Some of this we'll be able to figure out based off of our knowledge of what we've already seen. Okay, now they did mention this already. You get to use toggleable slots. In other words, you click the slot to disable, just like it says here. That way you can make sure that your items fall into the correct spot in the crafter. Okay, we need to pause right here. The reason I want to pause is this is our first insight into how this thing works. So we've already seen that it works like a crafting table. You're able to disable certain slots, but I want you to notice something, and that is that iron ingots are actually stackable. And yet they are not stacking into the crafter. When Agnes earlier placed all of her ingredients into the crafter, they actually stacked up. In this scene, they're not stacking. So I started thinking maybe hoppers go into different parts of this thing, and that's how you decide which slot it goes into, but that doesn't make sense because a cube doesn't have 9 sides. So what I'm thinking is happening is that an item automatically goes into an empty slot, and that's why they have all of this redstone going on, is they're trying to time it. One ingot goes in, another ingot goes in, a stick, and then a redstone signal hits the crafter and causes it to shoot out the item. So you can see here that an iron ingot is going in and it'll put out 9 iron nuggets. And so it's automatically giving us the recipe that's going to craft. And then once the other item goes in, it takes away that recipe. That's interesting for me because in Minecraft world, you have shapeless recipes and shaped recipes, and it makes me wonder how this crafter is going to interact with those. Because technically, I have 2 iron ingots here, which should be 18 iron nuggets, and it's not. So I wonder how that's going to change recipes in the future. Okay, and then we got our sword, and then it spit the sword out. It's going to do it again, and it's going to keep doing it. Now let's pause here. Okay, let's take a look at the redstone. Zooming in, you'll see that we have a barrel. And based off of our previous observations of this block, you will see that the front of the block is actually closest to this thing right here.
The crafter.
And that thing actually has an animation. So if we go back and look at this one scene, there, when it receives a redstone signal, it actually moves this little animation here. This little gray thing goes to the top and comes back down. And I'm assuming what that is it's the front door opening up and spitting out the item. And it is going directly into the barrel, which means that this thing works like a dropper. It can spit things directly into barrels, into hoppers, into chests without needing a hopper going into those things. And you'll also notice that it's receiving a redstone signal here, which activates it to drop the item. Okay, and before we move away from this thing, let's talk about how this mechanism works. Okay, guys, I'm going to get a little redstone nerdy on you. Let's talk about this. So this contraption with the ingredients given can actually craft 2 different recipes. The first one was iron nuggets, but 1 iron ingot was not enough to activate this thing. So in other words, a sword put out a greater redstone signal than the iron nuggets. Once it realized that it was creating a redstone sword, that created a big redstone signal, which you can count the blocks here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blocks. So that created 7 blocks of redstone signal, at least. Maybe it creates more. But we do know that the nuggets were not enough. In other words, the nuggets probably stopped before this. And to be honest, they probably stopped somewhere around 5 or 6, and that's why they extended it to 7, so that the nuggets would not set off the contraption, but the sword would. All right, stay with me, stay with me. So we have a signal coming around here that's coming up here, and the redstone signal is probably causing this hopper to release an item. Now, redstone signals don't activate hoppers, they actually disactivate hoppers. So what I believe is going into here is actually the iron ingots. So the iron ingots are going in here. This dropper over here has a delayed signal, which means it's the last item in the recipe. So this hopper puts out 1, 2 ingots, and then the redstone comes around and turns it off. This redstone is delayed, it activates this dropper, which pushes the sticks into here, which makes them the last item in the crafting recipe. Now, apparently this thing over here turns it off and on. I'm not sure how all that works yet, but let's get one last look at this contraption. You have different hoppers and droppers, which is causing the recipe to be put in a certain order. And I do want to point out that this recipe is happening from top to bottom. In other words, there is an order here of operations. You have ingot, stick, and then it creates, and then the redstone signal went off and it spit out the sword. I don't know if you guys have seen those automatic potion making contraptions. That's kind of what this reminds me of. And from one redstone geek to the rest of them, there is probably an easier way to do this redstone. This whole scene kind of shows the trial and error of making redstone contraptions, shows how complicated they can be. I'm sure we'll find a really, really easy way very quickly to make automatic recipes. All right, but there's another scene with this thing. Let's take a look. All right, we just got another look at it. Okay, right here. They're stacked on top of each other, and you can see it all activating here. So first of all, you see that they have a red animation on top. That's pretty cool. I also want to point out that these are directional blocks, which is really important to know. Now, we don't know if they can be pointed up or down. I actually doubt that. It looks like they can only be pointed to the side as of right now. But again, they're going directly into the dispensers here, which means that they don't need to spit into a hopper to go into a dispenser, dropper, chest, barrel. I also want to point something else out here that's pretty subtle, but also really important. You'll notice here that there is no repeater. What a repeater does for blocks that can't receive redstone signal directly is it pushes the redstone signal in. But in this case, this crafter block receives the redstone signal directly. You don't need a repeater that pushes the signal in. So the way that this contraption is working is they're stepping on the pressure plate. It's connected to a block down here that's now a powered block. The redstone is running along to the left, and then it's going up, and it's actually powering this crafter right here, this one, and this one. So they're probably holding items inside, which is also an interesting thing. So I guess they can kind of be used as inefficient chests, but they're holding items inside. Their redstone gets activated. We can see the animation on the side, and they are putting new armor into these dispensers. Now, at the same time, this pressure plate is activating the dispensers, which is equipping the player with all of the armor and opening the door. That one pressure plate is doing a lot of work. And that's the last that we get to see of the crafter. Let's recap what we've learned so far. So what we've learned here is that the crafter actually releases a redstone signal based off of the item that it is crafting. We've also learned that it is a directional block and it interacts with hoppers, at least from the top. We've also learned that it pushes items directly into chests, into barrels, into hoppers, and dispensers. We've learned that you can put a lot of the ingredients into the crafter and it will continue crafting until you run out of ingredients. We also learned that it has a really cool animation. Let's see that in slow motion. It also has a cool animation on top where the grid lights up when it is activated. We've learned that you can turn slots off and on based off of the shape of the recipe that you're making. We don't know how that's going to work with shapeless recipes yet, but I'm sure we'll figure it out. And we've learned that the recipe fills up from top row to bottom row, and it doesn't stack items one on top of each other. And lastly, based off of this scene, we have learned that these crafters receive the redstone signal directly. They do not need a repeater to push the redstone signal into them, or they don't need a powered block to do that. They receive it directly. Alright guys, that was enough nerding for today. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I can't wait to explore this crafter more, and I can't wait for the farms that are going to come out of this. If you like this video, be sure and like and subscribe. I'm Profe Pablo. Thanks for watching.